Welcome everybody, and thanks Will for that little intro to the panel. This is why premium streaming video is increasingly ad supported, and we have a great group of panelists to discuss this morning. My name is Colin Dixon. I'm founder and chief analyst at Endscreen Media, and I've had some great conversations with these folks in the past, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation this morning. So why don't we get started? I'm going to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get going on the questions. So why don't we start with you, Jen?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm Jen Sock. I'm the Executive Director of Channel Solutions at Group M, which encompasses 5 areas: audio, the local video area, direct response, advanced TV, and publishing.
Very good. Eric.
Hi, Eric Opeka, President and Chief Strategy Officer of Cineverse. We operate a portfolio of 30 different streaming brands distributed broadly on a global basis. And we operate a technology platform called Matchpoint, which helps companies ranging from studios to producers and distributors basically engage their content with the digital ecosystem. I'm so glad to be here.
Very good. Tejas.
Hi there, Tejas Shah, SVP of Commercial Strategy and Analytics for FilmRise. FilmRise is a studio and distributor based out of Brooklyn. We have been distributing content to AVOD and FAST platforms for over 12 years now, also operating 80+ FAST channels on 350+ distribution points. My role specifically is around content valuation for our acquisitions, go-to-market strategy, as well as overseeing our direct-to-consumer operations, which include 21 apps on the vast majority of CTV devices and 15 YouTube channels.
Very good. Dave?
Hey, everybody. Dave Bernath, VP of Sales and Partnerships at Whirl. Whirl is, been in this game for a while. Our main products are giving companies the digital tools necessary to create, distribute, and monetize their FAST channels. We're owned by a company called AppLovin, who bought us about a year and change ago. And increasingly, we've gone from helping folks get channels out the door, down those railroad tracks to the various platforms, to helping them monetize them, which is apropos of this panel, and increasingly market them, because discovery is the next challenge we're all facing, how to get my stuff watched. But it's good to be here.
Isn't it just? And I'm sure that's going to come up on the panel in our discussion. Bill, introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. Bill Condon. I work for Xumo, a joint venture between Comcast and Charter. And Xumo's got 3 distinct businesses. There's the consumer-facing app, Xumo Play, which has got 300+ free ad-supported streaming TV channels. Our devices and operating system side of it, which has got Xumo TVs, as well as Xumo Stream Boxes. And then the last piece is Enterprise, which I run the sales for, is the creation, delivery, monetization, and measurement of FAST channels across multiple devices, whether it's a TV or could be coming soon a car, or maybe by the end of the year, you could see some FAST in a plane. So excited to be part of the panel, and thank you for having me.
Very good. And so let's jump in. I think it's fair to say that pretty much every SVOD, well, with the exception of Apple TV Plus, now has an ad tier. This is a pretty big change for the industry, and it's happened in a relatively short period of time. Let's start off with just the sort of why do you think that the operator's doing this? And then we'll talk a little bit about how they're going about it. So, Eric, you want to kick us off with why you think that it's so necessary for them to do this now?
Sure. Well, like everything in media, what's old is new again. The kind of dual tier model isn't actually new. It was pioneered by Hulu, kind of in the digital 1.0 era. It's had a multi-tiered approach, even right up until their launch of subscription services. And the reason why it worked then and it works now is pretty simple. The ARPU you drive per user is far higher in a hybrid subscription and ad-supported model versus subscription alone. That was a secret that was known pretty extensively by the Hulu team that brought that thinking to Warner Bros. Discovery, but it's also permeated throughout the industry over the years. So I think you know, you get the best of both worlds, where you have a highly price sensitive consumer cohort really struggling with, you know, I think now, you know, 8 to 10 subscriptions to get access to everything. This is going to allow for lower churn, and it will also enable, frankly, a lot of these major media brands to engage in strategic bundling with telco and other providers. So I think those two factors, consumer demand, high ARPU, bundling capabilities, really what leads to the proliferation of this.
And Jen, does this inventory that's now been uncovered in these AVOD tiers inside of SVOD, are they premium to your customers?
I think it's just an extension of what we see on the television screen, right? It's about choices. It's about consumers deciding where they're going to be. And so I think this is a result of market competition and where we need to go. If that's where the potential impressions are, then that's the direction that we're going to go in. But I think it's an interesting play. It can be a little less ads, a little less cluttered. And so there's certainly lots of conversations on the potential of what we can do with all the new inventory.
One of the things that has sort of fascinated me is it really seems to be primarily driven as an AVOD play these days. And we're not seeing a ton of linear channels showing up in the SVOD services yet. Is that about to change, Dave? Do you think? Are we going to see more linear in those SVOD services?
Maybe, you know, I think, you know, the success of FAST channels to date, I think, was in part because they were familiar to a lot of viewers, certainly medium to older viewers, you know, knew the EPG, they understood the concept, they didn't have to think, they just dove in. But I feel like going forward, it's got to iterate, and there needs to be some new ways to interact with these, you know, these UXs. So if I'm sitting at Netflix, do I want to light up, you know, what Discovery Plus had, you know, 15 linear channels based on single IP, maybe, or maybe I want to do something linear that's personalized based on the user. So I think versions of linear, versions of dropping into something, but I'm not so sure it would necessarily have to be or should be, you know, 10 programmed FAST channels inside of Max or something. So I don't know.
Yeah, Bill, you had some thoughts? I see you nodding.
Yeah, I think it depends on your definition. Like when you're saying linear, are you talking about how it's delivered or the content that's coming from television? Because if you're talking about the content that's coming from television, I would respectfully disagree with you in terms of, I look at what's happened in the past couple of years in terms of what AMC has done, or, you know, FilmRise, you know, they've got Unsolved Mysteries and tons of great content from years past that has been linear and runs on those channels. Or our sister company, NBC, launched 50 FAST channels last year with significant linear IP, anywhere from Saturday Night Live to Top Chef to Keeping Up with the Kardashians to Saved by the Bell or Murder, She Wrote. Like this is, I think Jen kind of nailed it earlier, where it's just TV. This is TV on a television for free with ads. It's just being delivered in a, you know, it's Back to the Future. It's being delivered in a streaming fashion versus, you know, your traditional linear or cable fashion.
Right. And Tejas, you deliver both to VOD solutions and to linear solutions. Are you seeing the SVOD providers with AVOD tiers, are they becoming a much bigger customer of yours now that they're doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, definitely seeing a lot more interest in terms of carriage of FAST channels from those hybrid models. Just in general, excited to see that transition over. You know, if you just think about where the parent companies of the SVOD services, they all are heritage traditional television, and so they have that that culture, that inherent knowledge of how to operate and how to optimize, you know, both FAST and VOD. So it's also, besides that, the introduction of inventory into the market is super exciting. You know, that's something that we at FilmRise have been waiting on. having started out, 12 plus years ago when Roku was the only operating system that could support CTV ad supported. So to now have all these different entrants, not only devices, but also OTT platforms, it's really second to have that critical mass.
And it really seems that AVOD viewing and fast linear viewing is driving growth now. Would you all agree with that? Jim, is that where you're seeing a lot more inventory showing up now?
Well, Colin, compared to what, right? That is the only inventory we're seeing. We wouldn't see the inventory that's not, right, ad supported.
But I mean, are you
So,
seeing a lot more of it now?
as more people are lighting it up, sure. I mean, as we see the Netflix entering the world and other folks opening up a more inventory, absolutely, we're starting to see more and more going on the CTV screen, which is great and super interesting for us.
Yeah, yeah. And driving, is this now the main driver of growth, Eric?
Well, look, I think this year is going to be an interesting year because, I think one of the things about inventory is it's, the demand, everyone's kind of piling in like lemmings, launching more fast services. Every SVOD service is now an AVOD service. Every fast-centric service is also rapidly trying to ramp up their AVOD offerings. You combine all of these rapid growth of inventory on top of Amazon basically flipping the switch overnight and adding a couple $1 billion worth of inventory. The market is flooded with inventory, and I think you're going to see this year the user base is not growing at the rate that you can launch and spawn new channels of high quality programming and users. So I think 24 is going to be an interesting year to see how those dynamics play out in terms of of CPMs, in terms of other things. But the user base is most analysts I see are seeing an uptick, but certainly not an uptick that's big enough to absorb all of this change all at once. So if simple supply and demand, massive, a highly profitable anomaly like the CTV market the last several years with double-digit high, double-digit teens to higher growth rates. Suddenly everyone dumps more inventory to capture it. Now that means that the value is dispersed among a lot more partners. You have some bigger players that can leverage their scale and size to capture more of the market, like Amazon and others. So I think this year is going to be a very interesting dynamic to see what happens when you dump billions of dollars of new inventory into a marketplace that's growing, but not growing fast enough to absorb it. I think that's going to pose some interesting challenges for everybody.
So in quiet conversations I've had with content providers, they've been telling me that they are actually beginning to rationalize their channels. They're actually beginning to back away from some of the channels that they recognize not to be good earners. Is this something you guys are seeing also? Tejas, Dave, are you seeing this? Tejas first.
Yeah, I mean it was only bound to happen. The natural curation of the curation. It was necessary sort of to build up in that way, and I think that is the general business cycle of any internet-based or digital company or digital product is to scale quickly, see what works, take in that data, and then interpret that data and make decisions based on that. So we were prepared for it for sure, and we are seeing that. I mean, we monitor each service's EPGs, so we've definitely seen the trends, and we're trying to operate on the back of those trends. Understanding what is working and what isn't, what are the white space opportunities within that.
Yep, Dave.
First housekeeping item. So Bill, were you disagreeing with me or disagreeing with Colin? I can't remember which one you were disagreeing with. I think Colin, right?
Kyle, Dave, I think you and I are
all right.
compatible. I'm not going to fight with you. We're friends, right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, I mean, just to get back to what Eric said, I mean, and I'd be curious to get Jen's point of view, and I'm not a, I've worked with ad sales people for 20 plus years in cable prior to being in the FAST space. And, you know, fill rates in the market were already softish, you know, heading into the end of 23. And with what Eric talked about, I think it's a real issue. So I just would be curious to get Jen's point of view. You know, I see these charts that have these incredible growths in spending, but, you know, boots on the ground, fill rates, talking to our content partners, talking to the streaming platforms, it's tough out there, and fill rates aren't that high. If you watch these services, you actually take the time to put them on in your home, you see a lot of slate. A lot of We'll Be Right Back with ticking clocks. So, you know, I would just be curious to get Jen's point of view, and just in general, how do we, and Bill's as well, how do we get more inventory to be filled? You know, the downward pricing pressure Eric mentioned notwithstanding, just even from an infrastructure standpoint, I just don't see enough advertising on these platforms.
Jen?
No doubt it's a soft market, right? And where we are, and that is a challenge. But the place we need to start is in research, and we need to find a way to actually take a look at the impressions that's on the linear TV screen and marry them with a connected TV screen, and marry them with all the different areas we're going to. So there's a lot of different measurement providers that are out there that we're all looking at, and we need to come to some alignment so that we can see exactly how every dollar we spend is working, right? Beyond an MMM, right? That's where really still a lot of clients are. We need to figure out how to change that model into something that's more futuristic, that it will allow for different touch points.
So I'm guessing that you don't feel you have what you need right now to be able to do that. Is that true?
There's a lot of investigation going on what will happen for this year's upfront, right? So I think this will be an interesting year and what the potential is with what we look at measurement. It's not speaking of currency, right? Those are two very different things. But I think this is a year, again, like last year, where we're doing a lot of investigation of what's available, and then we'll see where the marketplace lines up as we move into the upfront very quickly now.
Yep.
And I think, Jen, I think you're spot on in a lot of ways where there is a lot of inventory out there. There's a big shift, and it has, I think Eric said it was almost like a gold rush where everyone's going in for fast. But like any inventory, you got to do your best to make it valuable. And where's the value? Is it finding that specific audience and bringing unique audience opportunities? Or is it, to your point, Jen, like what you heard the early stats in terms of incrementality around free ad-supported streaming TV and connected TV, where you're reaching a new audience. So sort of proving out that value to then bring it back so Jen doesn't really have an issue telling a client, hey, you need to shift X amount of your budget over here because it works. And we'll talk about this probably later, just what are the performance opportunities that you can kind of bring into connected TV, whether it's an ad experience or the measurement opportunity. It's sort of reaching that right audience and bringing those specific results. But I think at the end of the day, outside of it just being an impression on a connected television, we have to make it work harder because it's a very competitive space, and it'll continue to be that way.
One of the ways that I've seen people trying to make those ads work harder, Bill, is through interactivity, but it's really kind of limited. It's limited to QR codes these days, it seems. I wonder what we think about that. Obviously, with Amazon's full entry now into AVOD, they're taking advantage. That's one area where I do see a lot of interactive ads and not just QR codes. Are QR codes where we're really at right now to make that inventory work harder, or are we going to see a movement more specifically into interactivity? Who wants to take a swing at that?
Well, I think,
go ahead, Tejas, you first, and then we'll hear from Jen.
Sure. Yeah. So, we've been experimenting with this, actually using YouTube as an incubator. And so, say, for example, you have a cooking show and a particular brand of cookware is being leveraged. So now we have call to actions that, effectively when a particular pan or appliance shows up on screen, there's a call to action that says, now you can buy this particular product. So Granted, that is much easier to do within the YouTube environment and where it's not necessarily CTV, where they're also viewing on mobile and desktop. But to me, that ideally is a model that we are leveraging going forward. And that, just using that YouTube analogy, the usage of banners as an ad format and just being more creative, AI placement of products within white space in a particular scene. Those types of things I hope that we can start applying to the CTV space.
Jen, are we getting ahead of our skis with placing ads actually in the video itself, or placing products in the video?
No, I mean, listen, I run the DR department, right? This is nothing new. We've been doing this for a long time. It's all though about what the offer is. So, you really have to look at what's on this QR code. If you want traction, that hasn't changed. If you're going to offer them $1 million, that everyone's going to click. If you're offering them a brochure, then the rates go way down. So I think people are excited about QR codes, and I'm all for it. We just talk to clients a lot about what is the thing that you're going to put on the QR code.
And what about the more advanced stuff, the more interactive ads? They showing up now more in the inventory that you have at your disposal?
We certainly have more people that are interested in new types of formats, particularly when you're on the programmatic track, and then you can change out the ads a little bit easier than on the linear track. So there's a lot more conversation about what we can do to personalize the advertising, right? I mean, I run the advanced TV group with addressable advertising that is still more old school and linear, right, in what we're doing. And then we complement that with what we're doing in programmatic, where we can be more personalized and understand who the person is that's really sitting in front of the computer. So I think that anything to engage the consumer is the right way to do it. You just need to have the right message to really grab them.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the consumer side of things here. I noticed that there was some new data this morning from Bango that in that data, there was a claim that over 30%, nearly a third of people had canceled an SVOD service because it introduced advertising. And I'm wondering what we think, how we think consumers are thinking about this, viewers are thinking about this, and if we're going to start to see some pushback on the AVOD tiers. Is there an expectation from everybody that we stay with ad-free? Eric, what do you think?
Well, as you mentioned on the data, everyone who's making these decisions are making them, based off of data today, right? These are, when you've got companies where you've got 100 million plus subscribers, I can tell you most of these are data-driven decisions that are being made around the ad tiers, and overwhelmingly the amount of people that actually are willing to pay for all of these different services and pay a subscription piece closely models the amount of people that were willing to pay the full freight for the $240 a month cable package that they had before, right? But the reality is in the U.S., the inflation of the cost of entertainment, in particular streaming, if you look at the rates that most of these services were charged for on SVOD a few years ago and what they are today, you've seen 70 to 80% increase in pricing. For the average U.S. household that's in the mid 60K household income, that's a sizable chunk of their discretionary income they spend towards entertainment. So I think people are used to it. I think if we can make leveraging technology to make advertising more relevant, intuitive, even entertaining, I think a lot of people, I heard a lot of people talking about, some of the ads from the Super Bowl and things like that. Some of the other ads they've seen that have actually been quite amazing. I think with new technology that we're seeing, the AI and other things that's on the horizon, the ad experience will be far less of a you know, suck it up and endure it approach that a lot of people think that they're going to do to save some money versus, hey, I'm actually, you know, these are relevant. This is important to me. Hey, these are customized to me. I can do cool things and find out about new things. To me, that's the holy grail.
And is that something that you are investing in, Dave and Bill? Dave, you are investing in AI to make the ads work harder?
I mean, for us, the big thing is with our content discovery product, which is really a machine learning sort of AI powered tool to help content companies or platforms find likely convertible viewers. So we're really leveraging that in that product set. But you know, beyond that, the other way I guess we are involved very much is that we have a lot of exclusive demand. Generally, in our ad pull product comes from our owner, AppLovin, which is involving performance demand to get you to download that DoorDash app and make an order, or you know, play that casual game. It's largely been along the lines you described, you know, QR code based. So we have our hands in a couple aspects of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, I think going back to the earlier part of the question, like, yes, I think it comes down to like value exchange. And if you are giving consumers the value that they feel they deserve and you're balancing out that ad load, they're going to stay. And to Eric's point, like there might be a limited audience, but it's important that you give consumers choices. And then going back to kind of balancing those ads, like, yes, I think we are using AI and testing AI in terms of programming out content and figuring out, you know, dynamic EPGs and what's the best content or recommendation to keep people within that funnel and keep them coming back. It's early on the advertising side. We've talked to a few different companies, but I do think there are opportunities there. And I think the other piece about, you know, we talked about ad innovation. I do think there's potentially ad fatigue, and it comes down to, once again, everything comes down to cost. We have a certain amount of ads that you potentially can produce. I do think, you know, the AI to be able to do different iterations and from a personalization standpoint, or companies like, you know, Brightline and other ones that are doing interactive, and it's less interactivity in terms of clicking and having you go someplace. Maybe it's taking that Ford ad that's running and it's a national Ford ad, but if you can overlay something on top of that content and pull in a local dealership, you know, insert a local store, or whether it's retail or fast food or casual dining, that once again personalizes, it gives the creative potentially more life because you can kind of keep that same ad and then potentially rotate in different iterations or special to kind of keep it fresh a little bit.
Right. Yeah, you bet. And one of the things that, of course, has just happened very recently is that Walmart has purchased Vizio, and there's a lot of ways that intersects our industry, of course, because Vizio has a very, very well tested performant smart TV OS. They have a free ad supported service called WatchFree Plus. There's a potential that this platform could become much more important for SVOD providers. Really interested how you guys think that this might impact us in the advertising industry. So what do we think? How big an impact is this going to be on us? Bill, why don't we start with you?
I think one, if the theme of this was like, is ad supported TV, or did we choose the right jobs in the right industry? I'd say yes, it validates that, because $2.3 billion to sort of purchase that. I think it definitely validates the space. I think there's more investment. I think you look at all the themes we just talked about throughout this, is that data and finding that right audience and dual revenue streams. There's a big reason why, you know, Walmart Connect is being very, very aggressive in the market, and this gives them another touch point. And I think you look at all the people on this call that are providing content, having services towards Vizio, like that's potentially about to get kind of supercharged. Yeah. So I think it's a validation of the space, and that's going to drive potentially more innovation in terms of, you know, maybe content, but more importantly, advertising and data.
Yeah, and we have another, this gives us another vendor in the market that can provide definitive attribution for an ad, right, Jen? Because they can connect an ad directly to a sale in Walmart. Is that exciting to you?
I mean, anything that brings more data is exciting, right? So yeah, I mean, absolutely. We look forward to being able to bring this together. It's such an interesting idea and interesting merger. So we're hoping that it'll help, some closed loop ideas, really understand what the consumer wants and what the journey is.
Yeah, yeah. Eric, is this going to be a little bit more difficult, do you think, for SVOD providers? Because Walmart's going to want more of the inventory to be on their platform?
Well, look, I think what's interesting to me about this is Walmart really goes full funnel with this acquisition, right? They have 3 billion. We forget about Walmart has $3 billion of ad sales, just none of it in the CTV space. CTV's definitely higher up the funnel. So this gives Walmart that kind of full funnel attributable approach to the market that it will be quite a compelling product in the marketplace. In terms of how this sort of impacts the overall landscape as it relates to market share, half of Vizio's revenue was at Walmart today. I don't know what Roku's number is at Walmart, but I bet you it's a pretty big number. You've got the house branded on TVs at Walmart that will probably not have competing operating systems on them if the future kind of bears out what I think it will. So there's pretty immediate implications for the broader ecosystem in terms of market share reallocation, in terms of both on the hardware side, in terms on the ad market, in terms of the premium CPMs that can be commanded with that full funnel approach to it. So all in, and at a very low relative price for a company of Walmart's scale to get into that. So I think it's and it's great for Vizio shareholders too at 100% premium.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, in the last couple of minutes here on the panel, I'd like us to think forward and think about what's coming ahead for us. So each of you thinking 2 to 3 years ahead, what are you most excited about for CTV advertising and what concerns you the most? So those two things. So why don't we start with you, Tejas?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what we just talked about with Vizio and Walmart. And I mean, I think that commerce and content have been connected to each other for a very long time, going back to the earliest days of radio. It's really interesting to see that kind of business model kind of come back to the forefront. So I'm really curious to see what kind of innovation that can drive and how we can start doing some of the more innovative things that we talked about earlier, including like call to actions within the advertising. And what I'm afraid of, I'll go back to another topic that we talked about, was the parity in supply and demand. CTV is not just competing against traditional television. We're also competing against mobile, social media platforms. There's a lot of people vying for the ad buyer's money. So this is quite the environment to be in right now.
Yep. Dave? What do you think? What are you excited about? What are you fearful about?
What excites me is just all the potential that the technology and the infrastructure, can provide for targeted advertising, optimization of, consumer experience, et cetera. I think we're really at the tip of the iceberg. So that excites me. My biggest worry is probably, and Jen can speak to this, there's a lot of inertia in both in just the way people buy TV and the measurement challenges she alluded to, which could be sorted in a year, could be sorted in 5 years. I don't know. So how to unlock the deal flow into the CTV space, I would say I'm pretty concerned about that because we have a lot of inventory. There's been a lot of great growth and it's still not quite happening fast enough. So I'm worried that that's not going to sort itself out as quickly as it needs to. And while that's happening, we have more of a web-based, race to the bottom, maybe on some of the things because everyone's desperate to fill their inventory. That's my 2 cents.
Jen, what do you think? What's exciting? What's worrying?
Exciting is bringing the data into marketplace so we can start to prove and really tell the story of how everything works together. But as part of that, the scary part to me is we're talking about one area right here, right, which is the video piece of it, but we're missing the audio, we're missing the search, missing the social. And I worry, you know, in the print form, I worry that we aren't weaving enough of a total visual of what a consumer is doing and focusing everything on video. And we really need to be thinking about other touch points as well. I mean, out of home is such a critical, important part for us, and we don't seem to be talking much about it. So I hope that the measurement that we come up with really does that.
Very good. Bill?
For me, I'd say the growth of FAST, but more importantly in international markets. Like, we're seeing some significant growth in different areas, but I think that's going to explode in the next couple of years. And, you know, pun intended, fast follow what's happening in North America. And what scares me is, you know, this is such a dynamic business. And I've seen this through the growth of the internet and then mobile, and now it's connected TV. I just hope we don't fall on bad habits and keep kind of repeating our mistakes, because it feels like I've seen this movie before, and I want to make sure there's a different ending.
Yeah. And Eric, you have the last word.
All right. So, well, I'm a technologist. So obviously the application of technology to entertainment is fascinating. You know, if you look at things like Sora that OpenAI debuted a few days ago, a year ago, we were laughing at these strange, bizarre videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti. Fast forward to today, where you have photorealistic, implementations of video. I think this technology is going to be far more transformative over the next decade than we've seen any other technology affecting the entertainment industry. And then certainly the implications for things like targeting, algorithms, the things that are, maybe the more mundane, not as exciting visually, but certainly behind the scenes will dramatically impact just how great these experiences can be for users. What scares me probably today is the viability of the entertainment ecosystem. When you talk about a rapid consolidation of companies, you talk about lack of any meaningful regulation of the FAST and streaming space. We had the Paramount consent decree, we had equal time rules and other things that were enacted to have a fair and level playing ground for all participants in the market. And I think today the streaming industry is predominantly being driven by trillion-dollar behemoths who really have been able to do things unfettered. And you ask any congressman today what FAST is, they will blink and not understand that space at all. So we're 5 to 7 years behind in terms of regulation and protecting both consumers and the vast ecosystem of companies that need to be supported in order to have a robust ecosystem of content providers and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what scares me the most, really, is that lack of safety net that we had in cable and in broadcast in generations past.
Very good. Well, that's a great summary of where we are, guys. Thank you all very much. Jen, Tejas, Bill, Dave, and Eric, thank you very much. And Will, we're going to hand it back to you.